Hey, fellow leaders, do you know what this bell is for? It is our wake-up call. The world is shifting at lightning speed. Technology is rewiring the rules. Generations are colliding in values and expectations. An AI revolution is unfolding that will flip our world upside down before we can blink. Stress, anxiety, and upheaval is at record highs. So in this storm, the question isn't if the change will hit you, it is how prepared are you when it does. Will you be the leader who panics or the one who transforms pressure into possibilities? But this is also the greatest opportunity in leadership history. If you know how to lead with clarity, with courage, and with higher consciousness. That is exactly the reason we created a superconscious leader. Not just to help you survive this chaos, but to help you rise above it and thrive, turning any of the disruptions into the major advantages that you can have in your area of work. So in the age of AI, you don't need to be superhuman. You just need to be super conscious. Welcome to a super conscious leader. I am Dr. Adil Dalal. You're watching Now Media Television. Welcome to a super conscious leader. Your journey to the pinnacle of leadership starts here and starts now. My guest today is Paul Peters. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Paul is a U.S. Army veteran, an author, a founder of Covenant Case Management Services, an organization that serves individuals with intellectual disabilities, mental health challenges, and substance abuse issues. He also leads the NIMIA Project Covenant of Love, a nonprofit serving at-risk youth, veterans, and the homeless, both in North Carolina, his area, and also internationally. Paul, welcome to a super conscious leader. You've led teams in the military and business and through mission work. Wow, what a background. And first of all, I just want to thank you for your service to our country, but most importantly, service to humanity. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Let's start
with
welcome. Let's start with something that you care about, my audience and you care about deeply, that many leaders wear confidence like armor, using it to protect themselves from the judgment and failure. But over time, that mask becomes very heavy. True leadership requires authenticity, the courage to be seen as human, but not as perfect. So as we get into this segment, Paul, what I want to ask you first is just share a little bit about your background, because I am totally amazed is your leadership experience in 3 totally different areas really should mean a lot to my audience. And if you can share a little bit about the transitions you made and what type of confidence did you need to get through that transitions, please?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to share that. Part of it started when I was just a child. I'm the youngest of 6. Interesting, my whole family did a little family reunion back to where we grew up and kind of went through some of the trauma and tragedy we went through so we would have some insight on how that affected and impacted our life. Most of my childhood, teenage years was really trying to recover from some of those things that, my father, who ended up going to jail for attempted murder of my mother, that had some devastating. You talked about confidence in a leader. Leaders have to be confident simply because they are leading people or organizations, and the individuals that they're leading look to them for that confidence. And for me, I had such a lack of confidence because of what I grew up in. I was very insecure. I was bullied as a child. And so I was on a quest, and it was a quest on the wrong path, but often the ones that take those quests make very poor decisions. And I tell people that wisdom comes from learning from the mistakes you've made. And I made plenty in my youth that led to a suicide attempt, alcohol addiction, drugs, things such as that. But it was on that journey to really kind of figure out what life had thrown at me and how am I going to respond, deal with it, knowing that I did not have a good father figure who, when we think about it, our first leaders are our parents.
Yeah.
And if they are not good leaders because of what they grew up in, we're going to go down paths that are not good for us. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I had to self learn or be taught by other people's. Fortunately, in my life, I had a lot of mentors come in that were not related to me that helped guide me in the direction of where I am today. And when I, went through a lot of help with the counseling and mentoring, I began to get the help that I needed. I got into the military, was 8 years as a chemical officer. That taught me the discipline that I did not learn from my parents. In my quest to try to figure out life, I got involved in working with folks with intellectual disability, mental health, substance abuse, because I needed to figure out why I had made those choices. So is getting into what I would call the weeds helped me be a kind of mentor coach for people who went through what I went through. And that's really contributed a lot to helping me to be a competent leader, because I went through a lot of what we work with Covenant and Nehemiah, because we can relate, or I can relate to some of the situations they go through.
Wow. I'm truly amazed, because I think, the hurt you went through, it could have very easily taken you to a different path. And you chose, your choices were the right choices, or a higher power was guiding you in this, on this journey. So kudos to you, because it's not an easy journey, what you have been through. So, let's translate that into other leaders. I think I have seen, and probably you have seen, so many high achievers hide their insecurity behind an kind of a fake aura of confidence. What do you think about that, and how do you, how does one kind of see through that, and how does, if you're the leader who's doing that, how do you change that?
Well, it's just interesting. I tell people, in order to be confident, you have to be true to yourself. You have to be authentic. Because, and I'm glad that you mentioned a higher power, there's a spiritual element that we don't really consider into leadership, but it really is that guiding principle that guides us to be who we are meant to be. I tell people there's really no competition in your life other than who you are meant to be. And interesting from a legacy standpoint, we were talking about that earlier, is I'm one of those individuals that believes our life is planned out. There's a higher power purpose that is instilled within our life, and we've got to match that. And the only way we can do that is by being authentic. You've got leaders who basically wear a mask and try to be something they're not, because they don't have the confidence and security to be able to effectively lead people. On a spiritual element, people can see through that lack of authenticity. And so I think the key element for confidence in a leader is be who you are, focus on where your strengths and gifts are, and lead out of that. Because if you're trying to be something that you're not, it's going to be inauthentic, and people will recognize that. People will really draw closer to somebody who's confident in who they are, because they know who they are and they're working out of their strengths, not trying to be something they're not.
Very true. It's always better to be an authentic self than be a kind of a second class, a copy of some other person, right? So authenticity is absolutely very critical, and what that means is they need to drop that mask. I want to talk a little bit about, because you've been through so much in life. I want to talk a little bit about success, correct? Success and failure. I'll give you an episode. Young Napoleon Hill once interviewed Andrew Carnegie. He was one of the industrialists, and said, "Sir, how come you're so successful in life? What are the secret?" And the question which Andrew Carnegie asked, Napoleon Hill, changed his life. He said, "Son, can you define success?" And I ask you this question, Paul, how do you define success in your life?
That's a great question. Actually, one of the books was a bestseller, was Success Redefined. I collaborated with Jack Canfield on that.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting, the world, and you mentioned it in your intro, they kind of paint a picture of what success is supposed to look like, the
Yes.
cars, the all the money, but
Hmm.
really that is not a good measure of success. Is I look at it from a standpoint, are you living the life that you were called to live? I'm very much a proponent on helping people find their purpose. That's my calling.
Yes.
And if you are living your purpose, it
Hmm.
may impact where you have possessions, which is great. But
Right.
success is really measured by what I would call the fruits of the spirit: joy, love, peace, all those things. I think people would spend more in that pursuit than trying
Agree.
to accomplish and get a lot of things that don't really bring satisfaction. I think when you are serving out of your giftedness
Very
mankind
true.
and you're doing it successful, I look at people like Mother Teresa or Dr. Martin Luther King. They didn't
Fantastic.
necessarily have a lot of possessions, but we can look back on their life and say they lived a successful life. And I think each
Yeah.
and every one of us needs to be able to identify, because if you not identify what your target is, what you're shooting for, and it may be
Yeah.
$1 million, but once you
Very
get
true.
that $1 million, are you truly successful or do you
That's
want more?
exactly. Or
So
happy.
you've got to be able to target you're shooting for.
Very true. And I ask my leaders, I have a conversation with them and I say, anything which costs you your peace of mind is too high a price to pay. And do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I have a ritual that I do. I get up early. I'm one of those 4 a.m. Risers.
Wow.
And I have about a 3 to 4 hour ritual that I do because peace of mind is so important. And if
Hmm.
I don't lay the foundation for what that is going to do,
Very true.
because we don't know what's going to come at us, and we
Hmm.
can have a further discussion. The greatest power that man possesses is the ability to control what they think and how they respond to circumstances. So I
Yes.
think we've got to make sure that we're guarding our minds, protecting our peace, because other people, things are going to come at us. And if we don't have a right perspective, attitude, then it's going to bring us down. And like I said, peace is the ultimate for me. Peace and love are the two ultimate attributes that every human should strive for, because peace
Okay.
is an internal, love is an external. We love ourselves, we love by our higher power, God, so that we can effectively love other people. And that's where service originates from.
Beautifully said. Thank you very much. Folks, we'll be right back. Coming up next, Paul shares how healing our relationship with success can help us find peace, not pressure, in whatever we achieve in life. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Imagine partnering with a firm that fuses lean precision with AI foresight, turning every process into a profit engine built on the foundation of operational excellence. Hi, I am Dr. Adil Dalal, founder and CEO of Pinnacle Process Solutions. For 20 years, we have empowered over 9,500 leaders across 25 industries and 5 continents and delivered savings from $1 million to $39 million via rapid transformations using AI, digital tools, lean, agile, and Six Sigma technologies. Through our award-winning workshops, lean AI frameworks, and human-centric coaching, we elevate culture, eliminate waste, and ignite sustainable operational excellence. Elevate your people, accelerate your performance. Visit pinnacleprocess.com and reach your pinnacle today. And we're back. Let's continue this powerful conversation. Welcome back to A Superconscious Leader. Want more of what you're watching? Stay connected to A Superconscious Leader and every Now Media TV favorite, live or on demand anytime you like. Download the free Now Media TV app on Roku or iOS and unlock non-stop bilingual programming in English and in Spanish. You can also catch the podcast version right from our website at nowmedia.tv. From leadership and business to purpose and mindset, Now Media is streaming around the clock, ready when you are. Welcome back. I'm here with Paul Peters, and in this segment, we're talking about something most people don't expect: how success can actually become stressful. Many leaders find that more they achieve, the less peace they feel. Paul, let's unpack what happens. So, for many, success becomes a source of pressure instead of fulfillment. When achievement replaces alignment, it drains joy instead of creating meaning. The challenge is redefining success as an extension of purpose, not of performance. So, Paul, why do some people feel less happy the more successful they become?
Well, I think a big part of it is how they personally define success. So for me, being an author and having a TV show and being a CEO, owner of a company, is you get busy, and if you don't guard your quote unquote busyness, it's going to erode at what brings you peace and what brings you satisfaction. And it's the decisions we make. For example,
Mm-hmm.
when I decided to be an author and then be able to be on interviews and all those different things, it takes away from what you have identified as your priorities in life. I recently got married, very excited.
Wonderful.
But when you get
Congratulations.
involved in a relationship and you have children, you have to
Yes.
first define what does success look like for you, because there's going to be some sacrifices that we make. And you
Yes.
never want to sacrifice the things that are high priority. For me, and I put this into my company: God first, family second, work third. And that's
Beautiful.
a priority. And I instill that within my staff because I want them to understand. I want them to have a spiritual connection because that's where they find their sense of purpose. I want them to make sure they put their family's priority because nobody wants to lose their families because they work too much. And
Yes.
I want to make sure that they're supporting and relying with their purpose with what they're doing in regards to working with the folks that we work with. And so I think it's very important is you've got to, like I said, you've got to clearly know, what am I shooting for? And in some sense, fast forward with the ability that God has given us with our imagination. Once you arrive at what success looks like, what sacrifices have you made, or have you been able
Mm-hmm.
to keep a balance of priority so you don't sacrifice your family, you don't sacrifice your health? So I think that's very important. And like I said, you've got to set a ritual of spending time to make sure you've guarded your peace, you're building the foundation of your life. Because once you become successful, quote unquote, whatever that looks like, if
Mm-hmm.
that gets higher and higher, but your foundation is weak, then it's going to
Yes.
crumble. And I think you do that at the front end, rather than the tail end when you've got all these people calling you and all these sales and all these different things, because you're not going to be able to successfully manage that.
Excellent. Paul, is there a person you really feel that they truly have achieved success in life? A role model?
Oh my gosh, I've got so many. I'm a big fan of Napoleon Hill. I've read that book. I'm a
Okay.
big fan of
Laws of
Bob.
success.
Yeah, I'm a
Okay.
big fan of Bob Proctor. Jack Canfield, obviously, is one of my mentors. Tony Robbins. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
lifelong learner, and
Yeah.
I don't necessarily admire the people who have made a lot of money and accomplished,
Yes.
uh, accumulated a lot of things. It's really, are they genuine? Because you can have the person, and we talked about this earlier. Person on the outside looks great, but once you get
Yeah.
into a close relationship with them, are they the same person? And
Yeah.
so I try
Very
to
true.
remind myself to surround myself people who are genuine, no
Mm.
matter what time of day it is. We all have
Yes.
our difficulties, but are they true to themselves, and do they treat people kindly? I think kindness is so needed in
Oh,
today's
wow.
world, and there's such a lack of it.
Very well said. I think empathy, kindness, compassion are so critical to us, and we'll be getting into the AI stage, but as you said, spirituality, kindness, empathy, those are qualities which are what make us human, and
Yes.
that has to be kind of the foundation of success, right? Without those bricks put at the bottom of the success, you cannot call yourself successful. Would you agree?
I would. It's interesting. I just did a lesson. I do a Bible study every Monday for my staff and my families. And it's interesting if you go into if you're one that reads the Bible, it talks about we were made in the image of God. And I tell people that is not a physical image. That is the character qualities of
Yeah.
what God does. That's kindness, that's love. The driving theme of the scriptures and throughout many great writings is love and how you
Yeah.
treat other people. And
Very
if
true.
you're doing that, then you are doing, in a sense, serving your purpose because you're making a difference. You can make a difference on people. You can do it in a positive way or you can do
Yes.
it in a negative way. Negative is destructive, positive
True.
is constructive. And you
Yes.
always want to pour into people encouraging, inspirational things that are going to build them up. And I think that's very important that if you're going to be an effective leader, you've got to make sure that you're, fertilizing, providing the water that helps that person grow into who they're supposed to be. And I think that's so
Very true.
important. We have a world that's prevalent with negativity, gossip, slander, discouragement. I mean, look at our
Yeah.
current government system and the shutdown. I mean, it's like combative,
Sad.
and
I know.
that's not helping the world that's trying to heal.
Yeah. Very true. And you know, you're right. In today's world, the chaos is just a little bit too much, and I feel bad for our kids. Right? They're growing up, they're seeing all this, and again, as you bring in religion, as you correctly pointed out, Paul, all religions teach us peace, teach us love, teach us some of the
Yes.
qualities of what we call superconscious, but we are losing that as a society. We are losing that, and what you're seeing is firsthand effect of that, right? Mental health issues, you're seeing addiction, you're seeing so many kind of PTSD and other thing because there are so many wars around. What are you seeing? Do you feel hopeful about our future, or do you see that a negative side of things coming up? Just your prediction.
Yeah, it's interesting. Being raised by a single mom, I watched a lot of TV, and the whole Harry Potter and
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars has got good versus evil. So I'm one of those
Yeah.
hopeful person that
Awesome.
always believes that good will win out. And it's interesting. We all have differences, and I think what
Mm-hmm.
has happened is we've used our differences to divide rather than to appreciate. And
Yes.
each of us has our own unique gifts. There's no two people are the same. Each of us has a
Yes.
unique fingerprint. And if we just recognized and appreciated what each of us has to bring to the table, then we wouldn't focus on our differences, our color of our skin, the race, our spirituality, our political views. If we
Yeah.
simply recognized and appreciated those differences without them being conflicting or creating division, we would
Yeah.
be able to serve our communities much better. And I think what we have done, unfortunately, we focused on the differences rather than the similarities. And you had
Yeah.
mentioned about the mental health and substance abuse and all of that. I'm one of those individuals that we were created good, we were created pure. Because of
Yes.
our selfishness, because of evil, whatever you want to call it, how it manifests, it ultimately affects our mental health because
Mm-hmm.
it affects our brain
Yes.
chemically, and there's enough data to support that. It affects us physically, high blood pressure, those types of
Yes.
things. And so part of it really begins in how we are thinking. Are we thinking good thoughts? There's a scripture that says, think on these things, that which is good,
Yeah.
holy, pure, right? If we were able to think on those things and less on the evil or the differences of hatred and all those things that does not help a community,
Right.
that would help. That would be the beginning. So I would say, yes, there is hope. I think historically we have seen one interesting, I wanted to share this opportunity is the book that I'm currently writing is about a gentleman born in 1925, dies in 2015, becomes a billionaire because he comes up with this creation. He learns all the different things that divided society,
Okay.
Nazism during the World
Right.
War II,
Right.
communism, socialism, fascism, all these things were ideologies that were very destructive to the people that were
Yes.
under that mindset.
Correct.
But there's an ideology that we can all agree on, and that really functions out of service and love. And I think
Yeah.
part of it is we've got to make sure we're thinking on those things. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but it really comes down to that. If we have a ideology based on truth and love, we would
Yes.
see our community members a lot different, especially if we're trying to serve them and pour into them, make a difference. So
Excellent. Well, connecting sections, the first and second segment, give me two or three highlights of how leaders can drop that mask, truly feel successful in life, and be authentic.
Well, as a parent, I've got how many kids? I think I have 5 kids now because I just got married and she has an 8-year-old daughter. You've got to be real. You've got
Hmm.
to admit your mistakes and you've got to be honest. And I think that's where it begins. Leadership is all about relationships and is all
Hmm.
about trust. And if the people that you're leading don't see that you're vulnerable, don't see
Yeah,
that you're humble, there's
very
a,
true.
a, a book that I love. It's Humble, Hungry, and Smart.
Mm.
And if you're not humble, and you're kind of come across as I'm in charge, you're going to
Yeah,
have resistance. I mean, it's no different than people who are leaders by strength, where they just command. If you want people to truly follow you, you've got to be vulnerable and you've got to be real. And I think it starts there. And you also have to be a great listener. That's why we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth.
yes,
A
exactly.
great
I
leader
love
will
that.
listen.
Yes,
Yeah, the great leader will listen to the people that they're leading,
yes,
but they're going to ultimately have to make the decision. And that's where courage and confidence comes in. So.
excellent. Well said. Thank you very much. Uh, so, folks, we'll be right back with Paul Peters. Do not go anywhere. We have some amazing discussions coming up, which you do not want to miss. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Imagine partnering with a firm that fuses lean precision with AI foresight, turning every process into a profit engine built on the foundation of operational excellence. Hi, I am Dr. Adil Dalal, founder and CEO of Pinnacle Process Solutions. For 20 years, we have empowered over 9,500 leaders across 25 industries and 5 continents and delivered savings from $1 million to $39 million via rapid transformations using AI, digital tools, lean, agile, and Six Sigma technologies. Through our award-winning workshops, lean AI frameworks, and human-centric coaching, we elevate culture, eliminate waste, and ignite sustainable operational excellence. Elevate your people, accelerate your performance. Visit pinnacleprocess.com and reach your pinnacle today. And we're back. Let's continue this powerful conversation. Welcome back to A Superconscious Leader. I'm your host, Dr. Adil Dalal, and we're joined by Paul Peters, and we're diving deep into one of the hardest battles leaders fight, the quiet war between achievement and self-worth. Many high-performing individuals link their value to what they do instead of what they are. This constant striving for external validation can lead to exhaustion, emptiness, mental health issues, and other afflictions. True self-worth comes from recognizing our inherent value, regardless of the output. What a beautiful, this is true to every leader. This is such an important point. So, Paul, why do so many people struggle to feel worthy even after achieving so much?
Well, I think a big part of it is, and I'm glad you started off with this session, it really comes down to identity. I shared a little
Mhm.
bit of my story that my sense of identity was really kind of warped based on the things that happened in my life early on. And
Sure.
so a lot of our decisions come out of what and how we feel about ourselves.
Hmm.
And imagine, which is a true statement, imagine that we were, in a sense, created in the image of God, created by a God, created for a purpose.
Hmm.
And, in some respects, we are everything we are meant to be already. And all we
Yes.
have to do is to agree with that. And I
Yes.
think this problem is people will choose their how to identify their self-worth by their
Hmm.
accomplishments,
Yes.
which they can really never measure up. You can never
Hmm.
accomplish. And it's almost like if anyone's into the dog racing, you got that rabbit you're chasing. You're chasing something that you can never really fulfill.
Yeah.
But if you already have a sense of I'm enough already, I'm already
Yes.
loved, I'm already beautiful in who I am. Anything other than that, I call it sprinkles on the donut.
Yes.
It's just added. And I
Very
think
true.
people need to start from that standpoint. You are already amazing. And if you just continue to pour in to yourself through education, lifelong learning,
Hmm.
you just get better, because it's not so much that you pour into yourself so you're good. The purpose of pouring into yourself in regards to educating and what I would call self-fulfillment is so that you
Hmm.
can then be a blessing and serve other people, because you can't. A lot of times people will try to serve other people out of an emptiness in themselves because they're trying to earn their self-worth. We already
Yes.
have our self-worth simply because we're created by God in the image of God to do
Very
great and
true.
wonderful things. And I think if people would just recognize that and then had a very clear purpose, this is what I'm called to do. I mean, like I referenced Mother Teresa and other people. And we've got a lot. Napoleon Hill is another great example. He
Yes.
was a young man given an opportunity, and he took that opportunity, and he positively influenced millions of people, including myself and
Absolutely.
yourself.
Yes.
Each and every one of us has that opportunity. We have been given gifts at our birth. What we do with it is totally up to us.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And I'll tell you, since we are talking about Napoleon Hill, one of my favorite things which happened to me is I actually opened Napoleon Hill's conference in Malaysia. And in the audience was the grandson of Napoleon Hill. What an
Oh, cool.
amazing person. And we became good friends. And he is a wonderful person. And Dr. Deepak Chopra closed the conference, and I opened that conference for Napoleon Hill. So that is
That's
a
awesome.
memory I'll never forget. And,
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill is one of my favorite heroes, too. Um, as we talk about this topic, I really feel what you're doing with kids and what you went through. If you look at the way the brain wires, the brain wiring happens very quickly in the early stages of a human, life. And as they grow, those connections then solidify. When those connections are not made early on in the life of a child, it is very difficult for them to kind of form those connections later on. What are you doing with kids so that they end up being great leaders?
Well, it's interesting. I Through the Nehemiah Project, we have a mentoring center called Growing Minds, and
Mm.
we pretty much target the individuals, young kids who are elementary, who are still what I would call pliable and teachable. Many of
Okay.
these kids' parents are either in jail or they have died from addiction. And the key is if you can get in there and teach them character values, things, and a sense of value of who they are, like I said before, that their identity, because they're created in the image of God, is to do great things. They have been programmed because of neglect that they're not worthy. And many of
Hmm.
them are raising themselves or being raised by a grandmother. And I think the key is get in there early enough and recognize that whatever was done, and this is really helpful for folks who've gone through trauma like myself,
Right.
all of that can be healed through good
Mm.
mentors, through good training, good teaching, and pouring into that young child that they are worthy, they are good. And if they're being guided by a mentor who loves them, then you're going
Hmm.
to see a lot of the healing of the brain take place, plasticity, because the brain is still
Yes,
continuing to grow.
exactly.
And so you can undo a lot of that damage from the trauma. And I think it's really linking them up with people who really care about them. That's why I'm a big proponent on mentorship.
It's a very positive message, and coming from someone who's experienced it himself and gone through that means a lot to the audience and to kind of humanity, because you are truly serving humanity in a very deep way. So let's shift a little bit from this healing, which happens. What I believe, and that's why I wrote the book Legacy Driven Life, is that we all believe in a purpose. When you achieve a purpose, it's for yourself. But when you leave a legacy or live a legacy, you are doing it for generations to come. Is that part of your healing? Does that become a kind of a formula for healing for people?
Yeah, let me kind of walk you through, without going into too much detail, my own story.
Sure.
I was driven because of the pain. I wanted to first to understand why this had happened. I played the victim most of my youth and early adult life
Right.
because of the pain was so insurmountable, that's what led me to drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but when in all of those decisions I made, I discovered my purpose because I got to be able to live the life of somebody who'd gone through addiction. I got to live
Okay.
the life of somebody who'd been homeless. I got to live the life because
Wow.
we worked when I was younger. We would go visit senior citizens. So everything that I did later in life, in a sense of purpose, I experienced so that I could have the compassion needed to be able to serve those individuals. So it was interesting. In the pain came the purpose. The purpose then leads to the legacy, because whenever you discover your purpose and you
Mm-hmm.
recognize that you have a calling on your life based on your gift in this, and you're already filled because you have a strong sense of confidence and self-worth, you're no longer trying to feed that void in yourself. You then want
Very
to
true.
fuel your passion and your purpose out of service and love. And so
Yes.
that's where the outpouring of all of that comes, to help other people, that leads to ultimately to the legacy, because you're going to leave a legacy one way or the other. It's either going to
Yes.
be a selfish legacy, or it's
Very
going to be
true.
a selfless, where it's more focused on impacting other people. That's the kind of legacy you want to leave.
Truly, yeah. I totally agree with you that, you know, uh, people like you really leave a legacy which is, lives and helps generations, not just this generations, but beyond that. What are some
Yes.
of the tools, Paul, which you have used? Like for myself, what I do is I use a couple of things. I make sure people understand to focus on their strengths, not on their weaknesses. I also do a lot of visualization. That's why I wrote the V Factor, or the power of visualization, because that's such an important tool to really make them understand what their self worth is. What are some of the tools you are using currently to help youngsters as well as leaders?
Well, I'll share what I do, and then I'll share a little story that I recently taught on.
Sure.
So I do the same thing, visualization. When you
Hmm.
understand how, and I like to use this example. I use it in my first book, GPS, global system. How basically you plug in a destination and you're able to get there through the
Right.
steps. It's no different how our brain works. You talk
Yeah.
about the conscious leader. You put something in your brain, it doesn't know necessarily if it's real or not real, and it
Hmm.
it works towards achieving that. We are very
Very true.
future oriented perspective. I
Yes.
tell people it's great to have goals and plan for the future. The only thing we can control is the present, but make sure you have a direction,
Yes.
priority, focus on where you're going. And so, from a standpoint, the visualization is the target you're shooting for. And you've
Very
got to
true.
make sure it's very detailed, because your brain wants to know exactly. It will figure different things out because your brain's going to work that way in the direction of
Yes.
what you're shooting for. Affirmations, so important. I always recite like four different types of books from affirmations, because the affirmation is basically persuading and convincing and reprogramming your mind on
Yes.
what it needs to be focused on,
Very true.
because you have to make sure you're putting in correct information that's going to get
Yes.
you to your visualization. So let me tell you a brief story I want to share with y'all, because there's a passage in the scripture where God speaks to Abraham. He was the father of the Israelite nation. He basically gives Abraham a vision of the future of 400 years, what's going to happen to the nation of Israelites.
Hmm.
Abraham was older. His wife was older. They couldn't have children. God gave him a miracle. They were able to have children. And God basically said, this is what's going to happen to your offspring 400 years in the future. God
Mm.
gave Abraham a vision and a confirmation that if you do what you need to do in the present moment, the future's taken care of. And that's how our future is. If we clearly identify what we want to do, the legacy we want to leave, all we have to do is walk in step to that vision, and it will be accomplished. And we will have led a wonderful life and leave a wonderful legacy.
Fantastic. That is well said, and a really good example from the scriptures. So, folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Up next, we're going to talk a lot about the superconscious leadership and how bringing the spirit into the mind and body can really transform a human being, heal a human being from inside out, and really create that transformation, which is truly needed today in everyone's life. Stay with us, please. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Imagine partnering with a firm that fuses lean precision with AI foresight, turning every process into a profit engine built on the foundation of operational excellence. Hi, I am Dr. Adil Dalal, founder and CEO of Pinnacle Process Solutions. For 20 years, we have empowered over 9,500 leaders across 25 industries and 5 continents and delivered savings from $1 million to $39 million via rapid transformations using AI, digital tools, lean, agile, and Six Sigma technologies. Through our award-winning workshops, lean AI frameworks, and human-centric coaching, we elevate culture, eliminate waste, and ignite sustainable operational excellence. Elevate your people, accelerate your performance. Visit pinnacleprocess.com and reach your pinnacle today. And we're back. Let's continue this powerful conversation. Welcome back to A Superconscious Leader. Don't miss a second of the show or any other Now Media favorites, streaming live and on demand whenever and wherever you want. Grab the free Now Media TV app on Roku or iOS and enjoy instant access to a lineup of bilingual programs, both in English and in Spanish. Prefer podcasts? Listen to A Superconscious Leader anytime on Now Media TV website at nowmedia.tv, covering business, leadership, purpose, mindset, and everything you need. Now Media TV is here 24/7 with the inspiration you need. As we close today's episode, we're going to talk to Paul Peters really about what makes us human, what is that superconscious element in humanity which will be needed as we are getting into the technological age. As we said in the promo, AI is shifting and switching this world and will flip it upside down before we can blink. If you don't believe me, just wait. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with Paul, because this is what you need to prepare yourself for the future. So Paul, welcome back to the final segment. The first 3 have been amazing, and thank you very much for your deep insight and your spiritual connection which you bring to this show. What I want to talk to you about now is superconscious leadership means dash to me. What is that dash? Could you fill that blank in, please?
I sure can. So it's interesting, the superconscious leader, and I'm one of those individuals that believes our communication with the higher power is in our mind. And when we understand that if we want to really have a good connection, and we talked about the power of the spirit, the communication has to be open. There has to be a good relationship in regards to the creator. And then from that, he basically guides and directs our steps in our lives, i.e. our purpose, and leads us into the path that we're supposed to go in relationship to bring healing into the world. There's a particular scripture that I absolutely love. When prior to Christ going to be with the Father, he said, "Father, I pray that they would be one as we are one." And what his reference point was, the spiritual connection. Because with all the differences that we have and all the issues going on with the world, I mean, not to give you an oversimplified answer, but it's really having to do with the relationship with the spirit, because we are all different, as I said before. No 2 people have the same fingerprint, but we have the same spirit. And if we're able to agree, i.e. the differences, and you mentioned earlier about emphasizing strength versus weakness, I tell people, it's almost the yin and yang. Our strengths are to be used for our sense, our purpose. Our weakness is that so somebody who has a strength in the area of weakness can combine with us so that we can accomplish a greater mission within the community. And I think that's where the issues have come up. We've allowed our weaknesses to make us vulnerable rather than having somebody who has that strength in our weakness help us to be all that we're supposed to be as a community, unifying in the spirit. And so two different physical bodies coming together as one spirit makes a complete union, as I would call the yin and the yang, to really make a difference in our world. And I think that's what needs to happen.
Totally agree with you. And one of the I'm I've written a book on lean AI, so I'm not against AI, but I also see the devastating power it has, and we can see it already. It's changing our world quite a bit, and it's becoming smarter than us. No doubt, it is already. ChatGPT, the IQ is almost that of Einstein, and it's just just like a toddler right now. So just imagine when it grows up, what would that be? The creativity is out there. So with the physical AI is upon us, robotics will be everywhere very soon. So they already have the mind and the body. It's the spirit which will define humanity in future. What do you think we should do as leaders who are protecting the future for the next steps we should take right now, Paul?
Well, I think the key is, and I'm one that is excited about AI, but I liken it to what I shared a little bit earlier. When you had, for example, Hitler was in charge, it was an ideology, and it was an evil ideology. Is the information that is going into AI, if it's not good, truthful information, it will be destructive. So there needs to be safeguarded. Like I said, you don't want to fill your mind with things that are going to bring horrible things upon you. You want to think on things that are good. It's no different than AI. Information that is truthful, helpful, will be a great benefit to our world, because imagine all the information that's out there. We don't have enough time in the day to absorb that into our brain, but AI has been able to do that. So there has to be some filtering system to say, is this true? And if it's true, then it's something I want to focus in. Because I don't know if you've heard the book, Who Not How, but if you have your who's, which should be in a sense AI, that's accurate information, it could multiply your ability to accomplish many things. Like, for example, I'm going with a company called Delphi to help create content and keynote speeches and courses, because I just don't have the physical time to be able to do that on my own. So there's some great benefits, but much like anything, we need to make sure it's good ideology that's going to feed and help our world to be a better place, not destroy it.
Very true. It's similar to bringing up a child, right? If you teach the child wrong things, it's going to grow up to be a negative person, and the environment plays a big role. So treat AI as a small child, and we're the village trying to grow this child. So you're absolutely correct. But I think where the issue is that it is growing at such a rapid pace. It is learning from its own self. So it's becoming self-learning now. How do you protect humanity from that? And what should leaders do to separate themselves in future? How will they not only safeguard their jobs and their employment, but how do they safeguard humanity as AI becomes that powerful, Paul?
Well, I mean, I don't want to see a situation where we're having a war break out, because when information in good hands will be good, and we saw that in World War II and many other wars, it was a battle against ideology is really what it was. And what we want to be able to do is make sure we have monitoring systems on the technology to make sure that what's being put out there is going to be helpful. And I think that's a key. I don't know exactly what that would look like from a governmental regulation, but we definitely need to make sure we have good moral leaders who can get a vision of what the future they want it to be, that's going to be helpful to our community and society, not hindrance. Because when you have leaders like Stalin and Hitler who have an ideology of domination, that's not going to be helpful. So we've got to make sure we, from a political standpoint, we're voting in people who are moral character and stand by, that are truly authentic and truly want to serve and lead.
Yes, exactly. And I think the future is what we start designing right now. So if we can start designing it the right way and work backwards from the vision. But today, leaders, which leader are you seeing in the planet who is doing that, Paul? Does that scare you? That we have very few leaders who are really understanding this impact and trying to work backwards from that.
Well, I know being involved with the Tony Robbins organization, they're very mindful of what they want that to look like. I know that Tony
Okay,
is involved in
fantastic.
AI technology. I believe he is working with Delphi as well. So I said,
Okay,
if you've got good, strong leaders who have a moral basis, foundation, I think we're
fantastic.
going to be fine. It's when that ideology seeps in and begins to corrupt. I mean, without getting too divisive, I think we saw that in our educational system in America, and where
Yeah,
we're at a really crossroads right now of what we're
very
teaching
true.
our kids because we've got to protect our kids. So,
Fantastic. I want to also ask you, because you have a very deep spiritual understanding, could you explain to my audience the difference between consciousness, higher consciousness, and superconsciousness?
sure. So each of us has been gifted with a mind to think. It's been
Right,
programmed all of our life. I would call that the conscious mind. But
right.
in order to be able to tap into what I would call the intuition part of ours, the guidance
Yes,
system, the moral guidance system, that's where you tap into the subconscious and superconscious. Because, like I said, I'm one that believes God, who is spirit, speaks to the spiritual element, which I believe the mind is a spiritual element because it's not physical. If we are open and humble and
yes,
allowing that God spirit per se to speak to us, and we have a moral character because we're guided by right, not wrong.
yes,
We're guided by selflessness, not selfishness. Then we are a instrument or tool that I believe God can use to help improve our world, and that's why it's so important. One, you have that close relationship with Him, and it's like anything. Once you draw close to the what would be the higher power, in my sense, God,
yeah,
and you show yourself quote unquote worthy because you want to serve, because your heart is right, heart is good,
correct.
then he's going to download the from the super consciousness perspective
Very
the
true.
information that you will need to be
Yes,
successful in your life and be able to make a difference and leaving a legacy in other people's lives. And I think that's the key is we've got to make sure that we're seeking a relationship with that higher power, and
yeah,
we're willing to humble ourselves because he's going to communicate that which is, like I said, good and holy and
exactly.
pure and right. And that's how we make a big impact on people. it's
Yes,
it's the ones that are seeking, quote unquote, and I have to be real careful I say that, seeking a higher power, but it's on their terms, selfishness. And so they're going to
yes,
falsely interpret whatever is information for their own selfishness. And that's where
yes,
the humility comes in. We've got to be broken
very
and
true.
willing to be molded into what he wants us to be.
Excellent. I think the humility part is so important, is that,
Yes.
you cannot reach the top of the mountain without being humble and respecting what is ahead of you. And
Yes.
Paul, for the audience, I just want to also mention they don't have to be religious to reach this level. They just have to be
Right.
open, as you correctly pointed out. Open and humble is such an
Yeah.
important quality. It doesn't have to be tied to any particular religion. It can just be your relationship with that higher consciousness and your
Yeah.
relationship to be open and humble to accept what is coming to you through the higher power. So, wow,
Correct.
what a beautiful ending, Paul. I am so blessed to have you as a guest. And Paul, this conversation has been truly incredible. I think we could have continued for another couple of hours with you, but
Exactly.
as all good things must come to an end. This show has come to an end. But can you share where the people can follow your journey, learn more about you, please?
Yeah. They can find me on paulpeters.online, or they can go to my website, www.covenanttoserve.com, and learn about what we're doing with folks with disabilities.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for sharing
Thank
your
you.
story, your wisdom, and heart with us today. Your journey reminds us that leadership is not about perfection, it is about presence, purpose, and courage. To our
Correct.
viewers, remember this: confidence doesn't come from hiding fear, it comes from facing it. You need to start being on that journey to super consciousness, because remember, in the age of AI, you do not need to be superhuman, you just need to be super conscious.